Hello and welcome to the show. We start this week's Canyon Rally with the Dove. Yes, this is a four-wheeled version of the Pigeon. Now, I have taken another four-wheeled version of the Pigeon down here. It was the Pigeon Stig that was a crazy, almost off-road race spec vehicle. This is much more like a road-going car. It is a rather tiny vehicle. It does, however, have a rather powerful engine in it, which means that it isn't particularly slow on the old accelerating front. Do actually manage to get it slowed down for the first, or the second quarter, I should say, sorry, which has surprised me a little bit when I saw the speeds that this thing was capable. Of course, it doesn't have to have a huge amount of power because it is very, very light indeed, although I do get a little bit of oversteer at an inopportune moment. I recover all of that. I'm actually hitting good speed across the jump. However, in such a small and light car, that is a very, very big impact. That is a very, very big impact indeed, and I try to recover it. Not quite doable. The first two hits aren't too damaging. That one there is the one that kills it, though. Yeah, it's amazingly, after the initial roll off the hill, it survived okay. But of course, the momentum is just going to keep on building. It's going to keep on going down the canyon, and yeah, we've pancaked it, like full on proper pancaked it. Amazingly, I did actually still have some vague control of the steering, which, considering how bent everything is, actually pretty good go. Now, we have seen this before about the standard Pigeon is very, very strong, and that is a characteristic that has transferred over to the Dove. It also rolls spectacularly well. It really does. Once it starts going, that is it. That is it. It is off. That time, unfortunately, drive shaft was gone, so that's not really surprising, is it? When you, well, look at the state of the front of the car. What's left of the door kind of looks like a fishing rod stuck out the side of the car. It's, yeah, not a pretty sight. The bridge jump was causing a fair few troubles for this. It's just a big landing down there. There is a lot of force going through a little car, and it can't quite deal with all of it. Again, we go for a big twist, almost coming to a rest at the top part of the course. Still, it tumbles its way down, and because it's only been landing on the roof and on the back of it, this time around, the car is actually okay. Yeah, the Dove is still drivable. From that, once more, it is pancaked completely, and the alignment is a little bit a bit askew. However, amazingly, that is actually driving pretty well. It's an odd shape now, yes, but it is still working. I was not expecting that to be drivable. We've seen the Pigeon do some incredible feats in terms of surviving, and yeah, it's a very, very similar story with this vehicle. The door flung open. I'm not quite sure where I broke the door previous on this run. Got a little bit carried away through the corner, got a wheel stuck on the dirt, couldn't pull the car off, and once more we go for a large number of rolls. Again, I have no doubt the vehicle would still have driven. In fact, the wheels look in fairly decent order, fairly pointing straight. In fact, we do land up on our wheels, and there we go. Well, your visibility is not going to be anything because the bonnet is stuck up against the windscreen. It's fine. It's absolutely, well, I say absolutely fine to carry on. It can carry on. It's a little bit on the busted side. Yeah, incredible strength from this vehicle. It didn't take too long, really, to get the hang of it. It was just the large impacts that you had to be very wary of in as small as lighter a car as this one that has, let's face it, still got mostly road suspension. This is not really an off-road spec of vehicle. To be dealing with 65, 70 mile an hour jump and all the forces that go on with that landing while I'm trying to get the landing as smooth as possible that's coming up here, that is one of the big problem areas with this car. This is a relatively smooth course in comparison to previous rally series I have done on Beam, but still, that is a horrendous impact. I do manage to control it that time, and I did start getting the hang of controlling the landing of the vehicle through there as I get a little bit of understeer. And that was a problem I had through the pond hairpin. It did not get turned into the first part whatsoever. Had to really, really slow it down. I don't know if it was the bumps or quite what it was about that corner. It was horrendous. But it wasn't too bad down here. And the brakes were pretty good up until the point where I cooked them. Yeah, as we came through the tunnel hairpin, the brakes got very, very warm, and Well, that was kind of the end of the braking. Thankfully, that was the last corner where we have a big heavy brake for the rest of this. While you do still need to go on the brakes a little bit as we just touch over 100 miles an hour down here. Yeah, we do have to have a little bit of a brake through here, but it's nowhere near as critical. So yeah, thankfully, of all the times for the brakes to give up, that was probably one of the better ones. We weave our way through these high-speed corners. It's carrying good speed through there. It is across the line at 93 miles an hour for the Dove. You see when I get on the brakes here, yep, they're gone. They don't really do very much anymore in this car. I was actually quite pleasantly surprised by this. Decent performance from the engine, while, you know, we're not getting much past 100 with it. The acceleration is still pretty good, and that's to be expected from a vehicle like this. And stability was actually surprisingly good. Considering the shape of it, you would imagine very, very top-heavy, very liable to rolling over. Once it does start rolling, it's incredibly spectacular. However, up until that point, it has, actually been pretty stable. So, all in all, I was quite thoroughly impressed as the brakes continue to smoke. Up next, we've got something quite crazy. Now, you recognise, this from Dirt Showdown. This is the Growler, one of the Derby cars. Now, the standard version had a mere 185 horsepower, and I figured that wasn't really enough. After all, the Dove that's just gone, I think, was 120-ish. So yeah, 185 horsepower wouldn't do. So I put the Stage 4 supercharger on it and the race brakes to go with it. That's given it a lot of power. Given it an awful lot of power. However, the brakes were perhaps, even with the race brakes, not quite as good as the Dove that I just used. Admittedly, you know, this is a much bigger, much heavier car going faster down into turn 1. The other problem with all of this power, the tyres were struggling a little bit to deal with it. There's no rear end grip, and sure enough, we go round for a spin. About the most sedate of mistakes that you can make on this course, going for a spin. Everything else basically ends up in a horrendous accident, but put down a little bit too much throttle and sometimes you can get away with just a spin. Now, we weren't too bad at all across the bridge jump, although trying to get it slowed down for this next corner is always tricky, and the Growler was incredibly bouncy across the bumps. The suspension was very, very soft, much more of a derby car, this one, and it was having issues with some of the sections. Great for landing the bridge jump, but for that particular braking zone, for example, car gets bounced around a lot. Now, this isn't the first vehicle that we've seen have that sort of issue. Also, out here, I clipped the outside bump. Some cars get away with riding that one. I was a little bit too far to the right-hand side anyway on this particular run, but yeah, the Growler not surviving that bump quite so well. Lost a wheel. It was, again, another relatively strong car, provided you didn't manage to ping one of the wheels off. That time we did get away with riding the bump a little bit more to the left was the way to go. These corners were terrifying in this, because there is so little in the way of rear-end grip and so much power that if you get things wrong like I do through here, you're just going to lose the back end, and you're going at such a speed where, well, normally you have a very big accident. Amazingly, that was a relatively sedate roll. In fact, we just slightly bent up a couple of bumpers. It's still absolutely fine to carry on, but yeah, when you're doing 85, 90 miles an hour in the back end, let's go. Very, very difficult to save it. More issues across the bump. This time, not going soaring into the pond itself. Instead, we go for perhaps a record for the slowest speed roll we've ever done. I think it's about 6 miles an hour that it went over. Yeah, it did not take much. It was a really weird vehicle in some respects. This is another example here. I run wide into the tunnel hairpin. As we bounce around, I get on the power too soon. We go for a spin, and again, we go for a roll. The rear suspension acted in a slightly odd way if there were bumps around, and yeah, very, very slow speeds, and you could still find yourself upside down. And that's generally the FailRace way, let's face it. However, with this vehicle in particular, yeah, things could be at least quite dangerous. It took a little bit of time to get the hang with this vehicle. There was a fair amount of caution needed and just a lack of any rear-end grip. I mean, not just talking about, you know, on-power oversteer. As you can imagine with a vehicle that is this powerful, even when I'm not on the power, there isn't a huge amount of the rear-end grip. So I had to be very, very careful through these opening sections. As you can see, the suspension on this a lot more wallowy than it was on the Dove. that says a lot, really. And it's just got to be so careful across these bumps, especially that we're coming up to here. This was a very, very easy place to make mistakes. I kind of hug the inside so that if I do get bounced up into the air, we're not quite going to get fired straight into the pond. Once more, carefully does it on the power around this hairpin. Don't want to get any huge slides from the car as we go across the dirt bump. Still barely able to get anywhere near the throttle. I might have gone a little bit too overkill with the supercharger, I will be honest. I think I might have given it a bit too much power. I don't know how much it is putting out. I would imagine a lot. And yeah, you just couldn't really go near the throttle. Unless you wanted miles of wheel spin, you had to be so careful. You can see on the telemetry how careful I'm having to be with the throttle on this car. We're still up towards 90 miles an hour. We do get to full throttle up to 103, but is immediately back under brakes because I know I can't take 103 miles an hour through these corners. It's just simply not going to work. Now we have to be mindful. Don't get too much oversteer. There is a little bit, and there's going to be a little bit of a correction on the other side, and certainly having a wheel on the dirt is not a particularly good idea as I tried to get on the power across the line. It's only 98 miles an hour across the line because I just can't get the grip to carry the quarter speed with this, and then it would get spun around. An absolutely bonkers car, this one. Oh, and the other thing that I did forget to change was the radiator, so it's still running the standard radiator. Thankfully, it didn't overheat until after we'd finished the run, but there we go. Oh, and to emphasise just how little grip there is, yeah, it's stuck now. It's not getting out of there. Now, many cars have crashed off into that area and climbed their way out. This is pointing at and climbed their way out completely wrecked. This is in pretty much pristine condition on one of the less steeper parts of the hill, and it's got stuck. Our final car to go today is an interesting looking one. This is the RG Apex. We had a couple of RG vehicles before, the Sandstorm and the... oh god, I can't remember. There was another sort of a buggy thing that has gone down here. This is more of a handling car, more of a track car, almost. So, should be plenty of good grip, should be some good brakes, but, as you can see, low-slung sports car, not so good across the board. The bumps could be the undoing for such a vehicle, although it is nice to have a car with stiffer suspension than that of the Growler. As we round these opening few corners, once you've got the car turned in, it's it actually got a real amount of grip. I'll get there in the end with my English sentences. Just got to be a little bit mindful as things inevitably go wrong when I land too close to the dirt. And it is a really common theme on this track. When you get a wheel stuck on the dirt section, you just can't get the car to steer off of it, and then there's not much you can do. Still working? I say working, the engine does still drive. Also, someone's made the brake discs out of jelly, but never mind about that. Yeah, lost both of the front wheels in that particular crash, as we now fly our way down towards the tunnel hairpin. I do almost make the corner. I get the car stopped, but end up clipping. I don't think I've ever actually clipped the wall on the outside in that manner before. Yeah, I was running it a little too close. We want to stick to the right-hand side, try and get a good line through the tunnel hairpin, but that was a little too far to the right. And the bridge jump claims yet another victim, this time full-on nosedive into the floor. Pretty nice one. Amazingly only lost one wheel in the initial crash, and then the rest come pinging off when we do eventually get to the canyon floor. Now we kind of have a bathtub, again, with jelly brakes going on. It was a pretty good vehicle to drive, though. On the whole, relatively easy vehicle to drive, although the one corner this had weird issues with. That fast turn has been flat out in almost everything, and I was expecting it to be in this, but again, it's the kind of slight initial turn in understeer. You've got to turn in a bit earlier, quite a bit earlier than you expect. Once it's found grip, it's great. That's what I was trying to talk about earlier. It's kind of difficult to explain, but yeah, it initially takes a little while to turn in. Once it has found grip, it's fantastic. But you've got to be aware of that, especially when you come to the faster corners on the track. Also, clipping the inside of the course. Again, it was just running a wheel across the dirt was enough to pull the car to the right. And as it got pulled to the right, I was about to get on the power. I was getting on the power. We spin the car, climb the rock face, managed to bend up one of the wheels at a very peculiar angle, and somehow the car is still driving vaguely controllably, which is, yeah, rather odd. Didn't take too long, though, to get this vehicle down the course. It's just a nice handling track car, if you like. It's not got the ludicrous levels of power, you know, the likes of the FR16, the Ford Capri, the what is it, almost 2,000 horsepower Sunburst. It's not got the acceleration to go with those cars. However, we have got excellent brakes, we have got a lot of grip once you get used to the way that you have to turn into the corners, which makes it an entertaining car to drive. It's sort of like a mid-level Caterham, if you will. And that's a compliment, you know. Caterhams are great vehicles. It's not quite the R500 Caterham, but it's certainly plenty to have a lot of fun with. And my fears about this car having issues on the bumps were, as you can see, completely unfounded. It is incredibly good, in fact, for such a low-riding sports car. Is incredibly good across these bumps. Do have to be mindful, as you saw a couple of times, you can't really afford to get away with putting wheels on the dirt. You've very much got to keep it on the tarmac because it will just pull the car off the course. And with this being much more of a road vehicle and, again, relatively light car, you can't really get away with it. Around the tunnel hairpin there, you can cut to the inside because of the angle you're taking. This turn was, rather scary. I actually had to have a lift. It's one of the very few vehicles I've had to have a lift through that corner to make sure it would get turned in nicely. Considering the size of these bumps down here, it does do remarkably well for such a vehicle. And we can carry decent enough speed through these corners. Again, we don't quite have the power to get the acceleration out the other side. There's a little bit of a slide across the line as well at 94 miles an hour. So, yeah, this with a few hundred more horsepower would be it would either be a phenomenally fast car or a completely and utterly out of control one. Probably the latter, but yeah, as it is, it's an excellent fun vehicle to take down a course such as this one. Survived. I mean, we survived perfectly intact. We didn't even lose the front sort of little wing / splitter going on. I was expecting that to come off almost immediately, especially with the bridge jump around, but that clung on for the entire way down. On to the times, and it is unsurprising to see the RG Apex as the fastest of today. Goes into 24th place, which is a pretty respectable time, a 36.9. It's a second faster than the Lancia Delta. It beats the SBR4, the 200BX rally car, the race Moonhawk. A little bit down on the race 200BX and the Lamborghini Countach, the crazy supercharged D-Series. That's a good time for a car that's a fair bit down on power. That makes up for it with incredible handling. We have to go a little bit further down to find the Dove, but a 145.0 is pretty damn respectable. Again, only 6 tenths of a second down on the Cadillac DTS, beats the Derby Grand Marshal, the Ford Crown Vic, the Burnside race car. So I think that's a very, very good showing from that little car. The Growler is within kind of just about touching distance of the Dove. A 148.6, just too bouncy a suspension and a little bit too crazy, really, that one. It goes, a 10th down on the RG Vortex that was the buggy, loses out to the Delta 88 Bang. It's slower than the ETK 6000 series. That was the big racing truck. Does beat the Rock Bouncer. It could be worse. But the suspension was the most difficult thing about driving that car for sure. And that's with many, I imagine, thousands of horsepower. However, that is going to be it for this video, guys. As ever, I will put links to all the mods I've used in the description so you can download them, have a go with them yourself. But thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.